And joining me now is the Vice President, Mike Pence, who is leading the administration's effort to respond to the coronavirus. Vice President Pence, welcome back to Meet the Press, sir.
Thank you, Chuck.
Let me just start with what more do we know about the death in Washington State? I know there's been, first of all, do we know the gender of this death? There's been some confusion. The president said a woman. The governor said it was a man. What more do we know? I know it's new information. It's been a few hours.
Well, it's a tragic loss, and a man passed away. He was an individual, we believe in his late 50s, that also had some other high-risk factors, but it doesn't take away from the tragedy. The encouraging news is that of the now 22 Americans, including the man who sadly lost his life, the majority of them are recovering well. There are 4 that remain in serious condition, and so we have this man's family in our hearts, and we'll keep all of those that are dealing with and working to recover in our prayers.
Do we have any information yet of how this gentleman contracted the virus?
We're working it. The process, Chuck, is that state and local officials are in the lead, but in instances involving the coronavirus or any infectious disease, we have CDC on the ground immediately to assist and support, and they're working to identify it. But I think it's very important that the American people know that the risk of infection to people in this country remains low, and that is a result.
You keep saying it remains low, and that's good news now.
It is.
But the virus is here now.
It is.
Do you have this confidence that this is not going to continue to grow?
Well, there will be more cases, there's no question. But it's not my confidence. It is the confidence of all of our health experts who are widely regarded as the best in the world, that it's important that people in this country understand that while there are 46 Americans that we brought home from China, and 22 Americans now, sadly, with 1 loss of life, that the vast majority of those people and the vast majority of any American that would contract the coronavirus that will be treated. They will recover.
In fairness, 1 out of 22 is scary. Okay, that's not reassuring. It's reassuring that so few have gotten it. It's scary that in the very few cases we've had, we already have a death. Well,
but let's be clear on this point. What our health experts have told me since I was asked by the president to lead this effort this week is that if President Trump had not made the decision to suspend all travel from China into the United States and establish a quarantine effort for people returning to the United States, we'd be in a very different place. And those were both unprecedented actions. But I was actually there in the Oval Office when our health officials in January came in and said, Mr. President, it's never been done before, but we think given the outbreak of this coronavirus in China, these steps are warranted, and the president said, do it. And that has given us time, working with state and local officials, CDC, HHS, leaning forward to deal with this.
I want to ask you about some of these travel.
We're going to continue. I want to be clear with your viewers. The president has made it clear that this is a whole-of-government approach. It's the reason why we've actually expanded our task force. I'll have one of the most renowned experts in infectious diseases literally joining my staff in the West Wing tomorrow. We're going to bring the best scientific minds, experts together, and we're going to work every day to contain this disease, to treat those that are contracted, and I'm very confident we're ready, and I know that we'll get through this.
I want to ask some specifics about the travel restrictions that you put in.
Right.
Much tighter involving Iran, much looser involving South Korea. I guess it's the South Korea decision. You're highly recommending that folks be careful to go to certain areas, whether South Korea or Italy. What about flights coming in from Seoul right now into the United States? What's happening with those
flights? It's a great question. The president announced yesterday his decision to use federal authority to essentially ban any travel from Iran. We already have a travel ban.
I understand that Iran, but I was talking about South Korea.
But this would also include foreign nationals. So if someone from another country had been in Iran in the last 14 days, they're going to be banned from coming in the United States.
But why Iran and not South Korea? That's what I'm trying to figure out there, because the South Korea outbreak's pretty intense as well.
Just in the last week, we have seen a increase in coronavirus cases, both in South Korea and in Italy. But it's isolated to a certain section of each country.
So you're confident that you can do that?
Two things. The president made the decision to raise the travel advisory to do not travel. We're telling Americans not to travel to that region of South Korea or that region of Italy. In addition to that, our State Department yesterday began discussions with both Italy and South Korea in ways that they will be screening people who are seeking to leave those countries and come to the United States. We're going to coordinate with them, provide expert counsel for that. So it's the combination of those things.
Are we confident, though, about the incubation period, that we know those screenings will work? I mean, sometimes people don't show symptoms right away.
Well, that's the process. At the airports where we've been doing screening, we've actually screened 47,000 people with a limited number of people that were identified. But you raised a good point. When people are asymptomatic, they're not showing any signs of any respiratory illness. It's one of the reasons why we're expanding the testing regimen. We're now providing testing kits around the country in key regions so that if someone comes to a local hospital and complains of a respiratory illness, we're not just testing them for the flu, we're also testing them in more cases now for coronavirus. And that's how several of the cases that came to light at the end of this week came to our attention.
Many companies have decided to pause travel, even some domestically, cancel some public events. Is this something you would discourage or encourage?
Well, I think we've got to follow the facts on this. And again, I want to say,
because some schools are being closed. In fact, one in Washington State, they're closing for a day to scrub it.
And those are decisions. I was a governor of the state of Indiana. Those are decisions that governors, in consultation with local health officials, will make as they deem that necessary. But other than in areas where there are individuals that have been infected with the coronavirus, people need to understand that for the average American, the risk does remain low. We're ready.
So you would discourage corporate America not to you're saying you think some of these companies perhaps are overreacting?
Not necessarily. I would defer whether it's foreign travel for those companies and their employees or gatherings in various places around this country. Look, it's a good time to use common sense this time of the year, even if the coronavirus wasn't a reality. But I think that what the president has told us to do on the task force, what he did when he initiated the suspension of all travel from China, the quarantining effort, is we're leaning into this effort. It's all hands on deck, because our effort here is to do everything possible to prevent the spread of the coronavirus in the United States.
So then this is better safe than sorry.
To mitigate it.
If a school superintendent says,
caution.
You know what, we should shut down the school system for a week, you're not going to question that?
I think the president would respect any decisions that are made at the state and local level. But again, I think it's important that
you guys seem to be
people follow the facts.
You seem to be, I guess, nervous, or at least the president seems to be nervous that this is going to slow down economic activity unnecessarily.
Well,
is that your concern here?
Well, look, the president's concern is the health and safety of the American people. I mean, the fundamentals of this economy are strong. I mean, we just saw some new numbers come out in housing and consumer confidence and business optimism. Unemployment's at a 50-year low.
Right.
More Americans working than ever before. The fundamentals in this economy are strong, and as the president said yesterday, we're going to focus on the health of the American people, and this economy will, and particularly the stock market that saw some downturns this week, it'll come back, but our focus is going to remain on the health and well-being of the American people.
You've gone out of your way since you've been appointed to this to try to keep this from getting politicized. You have made every effort, every statement. But I want to play for you what some of your allies have said about the coronavirus. Here's including the president's son and the RNC chair. Take a listen, sir.
The coronavirus being weaponized as yet another element to bring down Donald Trump.
Democrats are using this for their political gain to try and stoke fear in the American people, which is shameful, wrong, and I think un-American.
For them to try to take a pandemic and seemingly hope that it comes here and kills millions of people so that they could end Donald Trump's streak of winning is a new level of sickness.
None of this seems to match the facts. What facts are there that Democrats are doing this?
Well,
it seems like people are asking questions and they're concerned about the virus. This implies some sort of political motivation, which is kind of gross.
Well, I will tell you, there's been a lot of irresponsible rhetoric among Democrats and commentators.
Who is this?
On the left.
Name some names, sir.
Well,
because this is just, it just feels like gaslighting. Please name some names. We're all big.
Well,
we're all big people here. Name some names.
There was a column in the New York Times that by a prominent liberal journalist that said we should rename it the Trump virus.
Okay, does that apply to all people?
So that the president would be blamed. Chuck, this virus began in China.
Why take this? Here's what I ask you. This doesn't help. This does not help us,
decisive action to protect the American people. And when you see voices on our side pushing back on outrageous and irresponsible rhetoric on the other side, I think that's important, and I think it's justified.
Does that keep the country united? Does that keep the country focused on defeating this virus and doing the right things? Doesn't this not? I mean, why fight fire with fire? If you believe what the Democrats are doing are irresponsible,
it is.
Then,
in many cases,
then why repeat the behavior? Is what Mr. Trump Jr. said there helpful?
I mean, to have someone advocate that you rename the coronavirus the Trump virus.
Is this a weaponization?
Is a reckless and irresponsible.
So you think the entire Democratic Party is doing this?
No, but there have been irresponsible voices.
Do you think there have been irresponsible voices on your side? Do you think Rush Limbaugh saying weaponization of this? What evidence is there?
Well, look, I have great respect for Rush Limbaugh, and he's a strong conservative commentator.
He also told people that this wasn't anything to worry about. Was he wrong about that?
Your viewers know the kind of rhetoric that has emerged quickly. Washington, D.C. has just become reflexively critical of this president at every turn, and we saw some of that early. But when the president tapped me for this job, he said, Mike, I want you to do two things. He said, number one, I want you to assure the American people that we are ready and that the risk to Americans remains low. That's what our health experts are telling us, and it's true. And then he said, and I want you to make it clear that we're all in this together, just as he said last week.
And attacking Democrats is a way to do that?
I reached out to Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senator Chuck Schumer, at the president's direction.
I'm not questioning your motives, Mr. Vice President. It's the rhetoric that comes out from all of his allies.
Well, look, you know, if this was almost any other issue other than the health and well-being of the American people, I think our nation would be more patient for it. But look, I was on the phone yesterday.
So you get it. People are nervous.
Well,
and it seems like people are taking nervousness and turning it into a political wedge issue.
Well, and that's why my friends that you just played clips of are pushing back as hard as they're pushing. Why? It is time.
They're making it worse. They're stirring a pot that doesn't exist.
It's time for the other side to turn down the volume. I know. You know, Chuck, you've been in this town a long time. The opposition to this president.
Turn down the volume?
The opposition to this president for the last 3 years has been unprecedented in my lifetime. But as I said to Senator Schumer and I said to Nancy Pelosi, I said to Governor Newsom and Governor Cuomo in good conversations that I think we have an opportunity to come together as a nation and work this problem together. And each of them said to me, and I take it at face value, that they believe that too.
Do you think this rhetoric from your side helps?
I never begrudge people responding to unwarranted, unjustified attacks. But I promise you, we're going to continue to focus on the mission the president's given this task force and given this government. And that is, we're going to bring the full resources of the federal government to bear. And the American people, the American people can be confident that we're going to continue to work this issue. We're going to work with leaders in both parties in Congress to make sure that not only our federal agencies have all the resources they need, but our state and local governments, healthcare providers have the resources and the support to provide the care that every American would want. Remember, Chuck, this is about the lives of the American people. I talked yesterday to Jerry Goldman, the wife of Carl Goldman. I caught her just when she got some good news. She'd been in quarantine for weeks. She just got a clean bill of health. She was going to get to go home and get back to their small business. And she told me Carl's doing fine, but he's got to get one more clean report. I mean, the tragedy this weekend, the loss of life in Washington State is tragic. The people that are struggling, the few cases that are seriously ill are in our prayers. And my hope is that the American people would see this as a moment, and that our leaders around the country would see it as a moment to think of Carl and his wife, think of the people that have been impacted by this in this country and around the world, and find a way to come together. As the president said,
it'd be better if everybody didn't take the bait, huh?
The president said we're all in this together. This is no time for politics, and I promise you, this president,
he's not going to politicize this anymore.
Our administration are going to continue to stay focused on the health and safety of the American people.
All right, Mr. Vice President, I will leave it there. Thank you for coming in and sharing the information. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chuck.
Hello from Washington, I'm Chuck Todd, and thanks for checking out the Meet the Press channel on YouTube. Click on the button down here to subscribe and click over here to watch the latest interviews, highlights, and other digital exclusives.